आओ बच्चों तुम्हें सुनाऊं एक कहानी एक कहानी। आओ बच्चों तुम्हें सुनाऊं एक कहानी एक कहानी जो आप सुनोगे, फिर लिखोगे और फिर सुनाओगे। So are you ready for the new story? My today's story is about a king who was very, very greedy, a king who wanted more and more things for himself. Now, what is the meaning of being greedy? Greedy means a person who is never ever satisfied with what they have. They want everything more and more, more and more, more and more. I'm sure you know of a few kids, maybe they are your friends who are very greedy, who go to the shop and keep crying, I want this, I want that. Mama, I want this. Mummy, look at that book. I want that book. Mama, this new pencil. I want the new pencil. In spite of having new pencils at home, instead of having so many toys at home, they keep asking and asking and asking for more from their parents. But you are not like that. I know you are a good child and you never ask for unnecessary things, right? But yes, there are few greedy children who keep asking for more and more things. So, like that, this king also was very greedy. Though he was a king, he always wanted more and more and more things for himself. One day, while he was enjoying walking in his garden, he happened to see a fairy. Now, what is a fairy? Fairy is the angel, the fairies in the heaven which have wings behind them. They keep flying and flying and flying and flying. They're called as fairies. Fairies are beautiful people who stay with God. They're God's people. Okay. So this fairy, he saw a fairy passing by his garden and he said, hello, Miss Fairy, stop. Where are you going? And the fairy stopped. He said, hello, Mr. King, how are you? He said, I'm fine. But who are you? And what are you doing in my garden? Who gave you the permission to be in my garden? The fairy was scared and she said, oh, my highness, I'm so sorry for being in your garden without your permission. Actually, I was just passing by from this place and I was tired of flying and flying and flying. So I thought I should take some rest in your garden. You have a beautiful garden. And so I was looking out for a place to rest in your garden. This king said, what? In my garden? Without my permission? How dare you enter my garden? How can you enter my garden without my permission? The fairy said, I'm really, really sorry, king. I won't do it next time. Next time, I will take your permission when I have to come into your garden. The king said, okay, but right now, you have to pay for this. Already you are in my garden and you need to pay. The fairy said, okay, I don't mind. Tell me what I need to pay to you. The king was very smart. He thought to himself, she is a fairy and she is from God. For this fairy, everything is possible. I should not lose out on this chance of asking a best price for this. He thought for some time, what should I ask? What should I ask? And then he got an idea. He said, look, fairy, you have been in my garden for quite some time now. And so, as a payment for that, I want you to give me a blessing. She said, "Oh, yes, King, my blessings are always with you." The king said, "No, not just a blessing like that. I want a blessing that anything I touch should change into gold." The fairy said, "Are you sure, King, you want that blessing?" The king said, "What do you mean by sure?" "Yes, I want a blessing that anything I touch changes into gold." Now, children, do you know what is gold? Gold is a metal, and gold is very, very expensive metal. Expensive in the sense costly. Okay? Have you seen your mama wearing earrings? Have you seen your mama wearing a chain, finger ring, bangles? These are all made with gold, and gold is very, very costly. Now, one question to you. What is the color of gold? Who can tell me? I can't hear you loud. What is the color of gold? Yes, you answered right. The color of gold is yellow. And so, going back to our story, the fairy blessed the king, saying, "Okay, I bless you. Anything you touch will turn into gold." The king was mighty happy. He was so happy that he started running here and there and touching everything. First, he touched the bench where he was sitting. He touched the bench like this, and lo behold, the bench turned into a golden bench. He said, "Wow, I am sitting on a golden bench. Now let me try something else." He had a sword beside him. He touched the sword, and you know what? The sword also turned into gold. Then he understood that anything I touch is going to be gold. He thought to himself, "I am going to be the richest king in the world. All the kings are going to worship me because I am having the blessings of turning things into gold. Now, when I turn many, many, many things into gold, I will be the richest king, and all the other kings will start respecting me." And he was very happy. He started touching everything around him. He touched the utensils, he touched the curtains, he touched the door, he touched his bed, he touched his books. And you know what? Everything turned into gold, and the king was very, 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 very happy. And as the king was enjoying being happy, you know what happened? The king's little daughter, she ran to him and said, "Papa," and she hugged him. When you see your dad or mom, you too hug them, right? You also want to go and hug them, right? So like that, the king's daughter, little daughter, she came to the king running and she hugged her dad. And as the dad hugged his daughter, guess what happened? Come on, tell me what happened when he touched his daughter. The daughter turned into gold. And do you think gold can breathe? Can talk? Can your mama's earring breathe and talk? Can your mama's bangles breathe and talk? No, because it is a metal. So, this little girl turned into a metal, gold. She was no longer his daughter. She was a metal like this. She just couldn't move. She just like this. Now the king didn't know what to do. His daughter was not moving. She was not answering. From there came the queen, and she saw, "Ah, what happened to my daughter? What have you done, king?" why he started crying. The king said, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that my daughter would turn into a gold idol. I just hugged her with love and she turned into gold. I'm so sorry. The queen said, I don't know anything. I want my daughter back. I don't know how you do that. The king didn't know what to do. He ran to his garden and there he knelt down and he started praying. God, 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 please send the fairy back. I need to talk to the fairy. Please, God, send the fairy back. And the fairy heard the king. She flew back to the king and she said, Your Highness, did you call me? He said, Yes, I called you. The fairy said, Did I do something wrong now? The king said, No, you didn't do anything wrong. In fact, you blessed me. But then I did something wrong. The fairy asked, What happened? You know what? I started touching everything, and everything I touched started turning into gold. The fairy said, Wow, that's a nice thing. That's what exactly you wanted, right? The king said, Yes, but not that. My daughter came to me and she hugged me, and my daughter has changed into gold. I want my daughter back, please. I want my daughter back. Listening to this, the fairy also felt sad. She said, Oh dear king, I can understand your condition. I am so sorry to hear that. But don't worry, I will take back the blessing. Your daughter will be same as before. Saying that, the fairy abracadabra and take back the blessing from the king, and he no longer will have the touch of gold. Saying so, the magic zoom went out and the king was happy. First what he did was he touched the bench where he was sitting and it no longer turned into gold. From there came running his daughter, Papa, Papa, and she hugged him. He was scared to touch her. He said, wait, don't touch me now. And he looked at the fairy. The fairy said, Go ahead. No longer the blessing is with you, so you can touch your daughter. And when he heard that, he hugged his daughter tightly and he told her, I'm so sorry to make you as a gold. And then he looked at the fairy and said, Fairy, I'm so sorry. I was so greedy. I'm so sorry that I asked you for this kind of blessing. Now, a humble blessing I need from you, that all my people around me should always remain happy. With whatever we have, we should always remain happy. Can you all bless us for that? And the fairy said, Why not? And thereafter, the king and his whole kingdom always stayed happy ever. So how was the story? The story was good, right? And what did we learn from the story? We learned that we should not be greedy. Whatever we have, we should try to remain happy with that. Now comes the writing part. So how are we going to write the story? As usual, we are going to draw the story. So here I have the drawing ready for you. Now how are we going to tell the story? First we are going to draw the king, the fairy, a few things, the daughter. Okay, so after drawing this, now I tell you the story again. There was a king who was very greedy. He saw a fairy passing through his kingdom and he asked her for a blessing. What blessing did the king ask? He asked the fairy to bless him so that anything he touches turns into gold. And when the fairy blessed the king, everything he touched turned into gold. He touched the utensils, he touched the plants, he touched all the things in his kingdom, and everything started turning into gold. And one day, the king's daughter came and hugged him. And as soon as the daughter hugged him, she turned into gold. The king was scared and he understood his mistake. He again prayed to the fairy to take back the blessing, and he asked for forgiveness. He told the fairy that henceforth he is not going to be greedy. And what was the name of the king? The name of the king was Midas. Midas touch. The name of the story is Midas touch, the magic touch. So enjoy writing and drawing your story and telling your story to all your friends and family. Bye bye. Happy learning.